All right, so Theo Vaughn announced that he's leaving the podcast that he was doing with Brendan Schaub, the King, the Sting, and the Wing. And this isn't the best news for Brendan, obviously, because Theo was a big draw for that podcast. Maybe the only draw. Like, now it's just going to be Brendan and Chris D'Elia. I don't know how many people are going to be tuning in for that. But maybe they try to bring on somebody else to fill Theo's spot, even though I don't think that'll work very well. I know they do have on Eric Griffin sometimes, so I'm sure he'll be on there more often. But without Theo, I'd imagine that show takes a pretty big dip in views. And I think Chris D'Elia will probably leave sooner or later, because he's pretty much only on the podcast because he got canceled. Like, I think if more opportunities started opening up for him, I'm sure he'd be out of there. So of course, once Theo announced that he's leaving the podcast, a lot of people are wondering, does the drama with Bobby Lee and Kalila have anything to do with it? Which is probably part of it, I'd imagine. I think it's just a bunch of things. I think that has something to do with it. I'm sure he probably wants to try to branch off from Brendan at this point, and I'm sure he just has other things to focus on. Like, I actually read that I think he's working with Bobby Lee, which is going to be a slap in the face to Brendan. I think he's working on some movie with him and David Spade. I at least read that on the King the Sting subreddit. And also, people are speculating that maybe Bobby and Theo will start a podcast together, which that would be rough for Brendan. But people do enjoy seeing those two together. Like, they did a podcast a few weeks ago. I think Bobby went on Theo's, and all the comments were positive. People love the chemistry. Everyone's saying they should start a podcast together. So that is a possibility. And I think if that happens, Brendan should just say screw it and try to start a podcast with Kalila. That would be amazing. Like, at least for an episode, I'm sure a lot of people would watch that. That'd be one of the more controversial podcasts. Those are two of the most hated people on the internet, and they still have a lot to work out. So I think that'd be pretty good for an episode at least. But obviously that'll never happen. So I think Brendan eventually, like, if Chris D'Elia checks out, I think he'll probably just end up moving to Austin to be around Joe and get on his podcast as much as possible, and then maybe latch onto some young comedian out there and start a podcast with him potentially or something. I don't know. He will have to make some kind of move here. But I think he'll manage to figure something out because, a lot of people, they don't like him, obviously, but they love listening to people talk about him, and they're just interested in what's going on with him. So I feel like you could probably parlay that into something at least. And also, a lot of the big comedians follow all the drama that's going on with him, and they goof on him and they make fun of him, but also at the same time they'll say he's a great guy and they respect him. And even Bobby, he'll still say he loves him. Yeah, like, I think Bobby's looking to forgive him. I don't think Bobby wants to have this beef with him. With Brian, it sounds like it's another story. I don't know how long it'll take for them to patch it up. But with Brendan and Bobby, I could see them patching things up soon, possibly. But obviously, after Theo announced that he's leaving the podcast with Brendan, the Fighter and the Kid subreddit had a celebration. Somebody posted the clip on there of Theo talking about how he's leaving, and it got a ton of awards. And of course, people are like, oh man, this is it for Brendan. Theo finally left. Like, I don't know why it took him so long. So this is a big win for them. And also, Theo's subreddit, I saw somebody posted this, which was pretty funny. And it's kind of what's going on here, possibly, which is crazy. And this is why Brendan should start a podcast with Kalila. Like, I'm sure people think that's a crazy idea. It's, like, terrible. Like, who would listen to that? Those people both suck. I hate them. But people would for sure listen to that, because they hate him so much. Like, that's why people listen to Brendan. I'm sure like half of his viewers at this point are people that just hate watch him. And during all that drama that he went through with Bobby and Kalila, I think Kalila took just as much shit from the internet as he did. And she's obviously still taking shit. Like, her and Brendan, I feel like, are meant for each other. They should get together and figure something out here. Or he should at least go on the Trash Tuesday podcast, because it sounded like they wanted to have him on after all that. And that would obviously be an interesting podcast. A lot of people would be talking about that. A lot of people would be sharing clips of it. Even if just to hate on it. Even if you're hating on it, you're still watching it, you're still paying attention to it. But again, there's no way this would ever happen. Like Brendan said, one of his podcasts when he's doing appearances, I think on Andrew Schultz, maybe, he said he'd rather have like 0 people watching his channel than turn it into like a soap show, I think he called it. Which I do understand, because he could just turn into another Death Noodles, which he's already kind of there. But also, if he made a video on his YouTube channel and talked about the truck walk or something like that, I guarantee that'd be his most viewed video in months. Like, if you look at the Fighter and the Kid podcast, I guarantee one of the most viewed videos this year is them addressing the Bobby Lee stuff and Brian apologizing. But like I said, I could possibly see Bobby and Brendan being friends again. Unless Brendan did do a podcast with Kalila, then probably not. but that'd be a crazy dynamic. I mean, I don't even know what the hell to think of that, but I could see Bobby forgiving Brendan and him, like, maybe Brendan going on his podcast or them doing something like that, because also Bobby, like, he dealt with a lot of shit during all the drama and everything, but coming out of that, like, he's a new man. Like, he's doing all these podcasts. He's motivated. It seems like he's getting out there a lot more. He's working hard, and he got rid of Kalila. That seemed to be like a good decision for both of them. Also, he learned to stick up for himself finally, and it just seems like he came out a winner in all this. I think this has really helped him. I think you'd admit that, well, I actually think he has admitted that he wouldn't change anything that went down. And now I'm sure he's probably going to start a podcast with Theo, which will probably be a big hit. Like, in Theo's subreddit, people are commenting under that post that I just showed you that Theo and Bobby should start a podcast. Somebody said, holy shit, bro, the internet would break. These two have the best chemistry. Another person said, why this hasn't been started is beyond me. These two are comedic gold and have a great dynamic. I've been waiting for this. And then somebody commented on that. They said, no, Bobby is in shambles. Dude literally went on a breakup tour via podcast, and it's still going. It's actually pathetic. And I mean, Bobby just knows how to capitalize on it. And, you know, he's getting out there at least. It seems like he's trying to get away from Kalila, and that's a good thing. Like, at first I thought he'd never let her leave, and I'm sure she still is staying at his house, and maybe they're sleeping in the same bed. But at least he's going out and doing all these podcasts, and it seems like he's having fun. He's enjoying it. So I think he could move on from her pretty soon. But, you know, I don't think we'll see a Theo and Bobby podcast right away. I think Theo will probably take some time off, or like just stick to his normal podcast for a while and see how things go. And also he probably wants to wait, so maybe Brendan, it'll be like less of a hit to him, because I'm sure Theo, he's a nice guy. He wants to respect Brendan a little bit, and he probably feel bad just starting a new podcast with Bobby. Or who knows, maybe he'll just go and do it right away. That'd be pretty wild though. But, you know, I do think Theo is pretty good to Brendan. I mean, Theo's a pretty big name, and he was kind of carrying that podcast, and he was on there for like 4 years, so I'm sure he put up with a lot of shit. And just like being associated with not just Brendan, but Chris D'Elia, like when he joined the podcast. And then also the fact that Brendan does a podcast with Brian Callen, who was also canceled. So it's not really the best look for Theo to be a part of all that. Like, I'm sure Theo got shit just for doing a podcast with Chris D'Elia. So who knows what'll happen from here. Like I said, I could see Brendan moving to Texas to be around Joe. I think after he did the podcast a week ago, he talked about on his podcast how he loved Austin, and it just sounded like he was probably going to move there. I mean, that's probably the best opportunity for him now, unless he could find some other comedians in LA to help him out, but I don't think anybody is going to be able to fill Theo's spot. He's obviously like a big time comedian and people respect him a lot. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I'll keep you updated. So make sure you hit the like button, leave me a comment, let me know what you think about all this, and then hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you at the next video.